It's my great pleasure to welcome you to the second of our Inclusivity Works lunch and learn sessions. And today our spotlight is on neurodiversity. Now, 1 in 7 people in the UK are neurodivergent, and that means that the brain functions and learns and processes information differently. Now, I work with the GEM project, the GEM Employability Project, and we provide one-to-one support for people in Gloucestershire who face barriers to getting into work, further education or training. We're funded by the European Social Fund and the National Lottery Community Fund. Now, over the last 5 years, we've had the pleasure of supporting over 2,000 people in Gloucestershire. And I'm very pleased to say many of those people are now in work, further education or training. Now, as a result of what we've learned over the last 5 years, we've developed a new, fresh initiative, Inclusivity Works. It aims to raise awareness and provide support to employers in recognising and realising the many business benefits of diversity and an inclusive culture in the workplace. Now, as we go through our session today, if you have questions, could you please put them into the chat box and we'll pick them up at the end of the presentation. So any questions into the chat box. I'm absolutely delighted to have with us this morning 2 people who are absolutely passionate about neurodiversity and with the organisation they work for, which is Genius Within, so do look them up afterwards. They're working towards a future where all neurominorities, that was a new one on me, will be able to maximise their potential and work to their full strengths. So a very warm welcome this morning, and thank you for joining us to Gazam Gokumain and to Patience Ejenga. And Patience has stepped in at the last minute because Jess, unfortunately, is not well and we wish her full recovery. So just again, one more time on questions, put them in the chat box, and I'm going to hand over now to the ladies for the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So my name's Gizam. I believe Tony and Sue already shared our backgrounds, but just a quick bit of introduction. So my background is in clinical psychology. I've been working for Genius Within for over 2 years now as a coach, and I'm also the team leader on one of the employability projects. So I'll be delivering this webinar with my colleague Patience. She has kindly stepped in last minute. I will make sure that we have enough time for Q&A at the end of the session. But I also want you to know that we will share our contact details at the end. So if we can't get around to answering your questions, we're more than happy for you to contact us via email, and then we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Just bear with me 1 second. So I'm going to hand it over to Patience to introduce herself, and then I'll share my slides in the meantime. And really looking forward to the session. Thank you so much for taking this time in your lunchtime, which is really valuable. I know you're really busy, but I hope it's going to be a lovely session and you'll gain a lot from it. Thank you. So over to you, Patience.
Yes, so hello, everyone. My name is Patience. My background, and at the moment, I'm working as an assistant psychologist on one of the employability programs. I do apologize. I've got a really hoarse voice today. I've got a cold that's just coming off. So I'm a team leader as well on a project called the IPES, which is the Intensive Personalized Employment Support, and we are helping our participants into work. So we are working with our participants, preparing them, looking at barriers and challenges, getting them into work, and also supporting them, working with employers when we put them into those roles. So that's my background.
Thank you, Patience. So I'm going to be sharing my screen. That means I will not have access to the chat box, but Patience and Tony kindly said that they will keep an eye out on the chat box. So, if you have any questions, I probably won't be seeing it because I'll be delivering and just mainly seeing my slides. But I reassure you that we will get back to your questions and we won't miss them. So Right, so, okay, perfect. So we've introduced ourselves. Today's session is going to be around neurodiversity awareness. A quick bit of a session plan. So first of all, we'll be talking about hidden disabilities. So what are they and why do we need to be aware of them? And then we're going to look into the workplace impact. So what might you notice in your neurodiverse employees? What are their strengths and what are their development areas? What are they struggling with? And then we're going to look into how do you support neurodiverse individuals? So managing diversity in performance and tips and coping strategies. Again, I will try to put more emphasis on the last part because I know we do really need some practical strategies that you can just leave the session and go like, right, okay, that makes sense. I can implement this straight away. So I'm not going to bombard you too much with loads of theory. So hopefully you'll get loads of practical strategies that you can start using. Okay, so let's see. So this is a video that I want to share. Hopefully it'll work.
Diversity. What's next for neurodiversity inclusion at work? At Genius Within, we want to help you evolve your business processes to match your aspirations and neurodiverse talent potential.
Many leading companies have started to recruit neurominorities and disabled people for specific jobs, hiring groups of autistic coders or telephone operatives with sight loss. We're recognizing the value of specialist thinkers and cognitive diversity. This is awesome, but it's just the start.
We need to make sure that we create the effective scaffolding, do our legal duties and break down hidden barriers that might hold our new recruits back. To date, businesses have invested in disability support at an individual level, delivered one person at a time over and over again. Oftentimes, we wait for people to fail and then we apply a fix, but the conditions that created the problem in the first place are not changed.
At Genius Within, we want to flip the system and create an inclusive approach so that everyone can work at their best. Our solutions allow you to analyze pinch points, themes, and obstacles, making sure that if you clear a path for one, you open the way for everybody. We call this next level neurodiversity.
We know that the right adjustments make the difference between unleashing neurotalent and failed token projects. Our tools build strength and progress into performance management, making it easier to achieve job fit. We can deliver these systemically without reliance on time-consuming and expensive assessments.
We know that inclusion isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, but that there are actually a lot of common issues which you can resolve at the company level. Over 10 years, we have built up a deep knowledge and have evaluated thousands of data points. There are clear cost benefits to next level. Our clients typically experience a 25% drop in adjustment costs in the first year.
But there are also huge savings that come with lower staff turnover, a reduction in conflict, less time off sick, improved well-being, higher levels of employee engagement, and greater productivity.
In short, there is a clear economic and competitive advantage to introducing systemic inclusion. Genius Within can deliver evidence-based solutions that are both universal in design and inclusive in approach. And now we invite you to join us at the next level.
Support you so you thrive and you shine on your strengths. So that's what we do. So I'm going to quickly talk about the definition of neurodiversity, because often what I hear is like people actually don't know what neurodiversity is. Well, they know the term, but they don't know like, so what kind of conditions fall under that? Like, do they have to be formally diagnosed, participants, or what is it actually? So, and a lot of times I have this question. So yeah, like, okay, autism falls under neurodiversity. What else falls under neurodiversity? We know ADHD falls under neurodiversity and dyslexia, but there is a lot more to it. So we put them in categories and we're gonna share the slides after the session. So you will have a copy of this, but I'm gonna quickly go through it. So there's applied neurodiversity, which consists dyslexia, DCD, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia. So you're born with these conditions. You don't have them like later on in the life. These are related to applied educational skills such as reading or motor control, and not considered as a health condition. Then there's also clinical neurodiversity, which is Tourette syndrome, autism, and ADHD. So you're born with the condition again, and that's related to behavior skills such as communication and self-control. And it's considered as a health condition. And this group could be expanded to include intellectual difficulties as well. So, learning difficulties as such. And there's the acquired ones, then mental health condition potentially leading to something. So then that develops in a response to a health condition. Could return to neurotypical if health condition improves, may stabilize, but continues to be debilitating. Sorry, I struggle with that word. So for example, like a lot of clients come to us and say like, well, I've got depression, but I don't know if that makes me neurodiverse. If it's a long-term depression or anxiety, which affects your way of doing things, then yes, it does make you neurodiverse. And again, that goes back to like, but yeah, I don't have a formal diagnosis. You don't have to have a formal diagnosis to be considered as neurodiverse, but I'll go back to it later. Then there's acquired neurodiversity. So that comes usually after like neurological illness or like a brain injury. So say that someone had a car accident, and after that, obviously, maybe the brain has got damaged or something, and they struggle retaining information or memorizing information. The working memory is not as its best like it used to be. Then again, we would consider them as a neurodiverse individual. Develops in a response to a health condition, potentially resolves as injury, heals or worsens as health deteriorates, and may stabilize but continues to be debilitating. Okay, yeah, I can't see what's going on in the chat box. I see some responses, but I'm going to carry on and we'll get back to it later. So neurominorities, the language keeps changing, okay? So we need to obviously keep up with it. So neurodiversity, neurominority. The latest one that we started using is neurominorities. So whole population prevalence estimated to be around 15 to 20%. So that's quite high actually. And in this diagram, we put some of the conditions, but we did not put the development areas. We don't like you calling weaknesses, we call them development areas. So instead, we actually put what the strengths are, the common ones. So often, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I said I can talk about this on and on, but I want to leave some time for Q&A. But what happens is like when we start working with our participants, they suffer from lower self-esteem. So, for example, I have a client who's got dyslexia, and when I started working with her, she was like, yeah, like I've been told that I can't do this, I can't read, I can't write, I can't do this, therefore I can't even fill in an application form. So how am I going to apply for a job? Yes, that's correct. So this person has got like a very low self-esteem that she doesn't even consider herself like she can't even find a motivation to apply for a job because no one actually told her like, you know what, let's first of all focus on your strengths. So what are you good at? It's got amazing, she's very creative. Yes, she can't read and write, but she's got really like, she's really good at arts and crafts. She's very creative. Her visual thing is amazing. And then once you start bringing up these strengths, obviously you see an improvement in confidence, and she then starts considering like, oh, right, okay, well, maybe I can do something in arts and crafts. Yeah, I can actually. Yeah, okay, so let me just start thinking about that. And then, yeah, later on, she started working in a charity, well, actually working in a charity, supporting arts and crafts lessons, etc. And that was amazing because now we found what her strength is, and we played on it instead of going on about like, you need to fill in this form and that form. And yeah, it's just kind of like providing the support that they need is the key there. So I got like ADHD, so not formally diagnosed, but gone through a lot in my life. And all like often people tell me like, oh, she can't sit still, she's got so much energy all the time, she can't concentrate, she can't do this and that. And then once I met with Genius Within, I realized that yes, I've got loads of energy, so therefore I should be like doing active things like delivering webinars, etc., because that kind of like takes my strength, like puts it in front of everyone, I think. So yeah, I think it's just working on the strengths is the key at Genius Within. So different strengths. I think we love this picture at Genius Within. We absolutely love it. We share it all the time. Here they say, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. So I'm really curious about your thoughts on this picture. So I know we're not going to be able to do it as a discussion, but please put them in the chat box. I would love to read them later. So it is not fair, is it? That for that monkey, it's going to be very easy to climb that tree because it's built for that, it's designed for that, it's their strength. But for that fish, it's not going to be possible. So does that mean that we are not going to give a chance to that fish in the bowl or to that seal? Or are we going to adjust the process and actually define what the goal is? So that helps a lot. So here we put in the notes as well, adapt your processes to allow for individual strengths. And think about the end result, not only focus on the process. So what is the end result? Is it to actually get an apple from the tree? If that's the case, the elephant does not have to climb the tree anyway. You know, it could just like, you know, reach the apple with its trunk and then get it. So I think it's also important to focus on the end process. What are we trying to do? Are we trying to employ more people? Are we trying to be more inclusive? Therefore, yes, we need to adapt our processes sometimes, because it's not fair to say someone like, oh, you need to make eye contact, otherwise you don't look interested, because some people do really struggle with it. So are we actually then not give them a chance because they can't do it? Or, you know, or are we going to turn back at ourselves and say, okay, is there anything else that we can do in our interview process? So lots of changes, lots of thoughts there. Okay, so I'm going to now hand over to Patience to explain the spiker profile.
So basically, just to feed into what Gizem has said, we are working on strength areas. So here at Genius Within, that's exactly what we do. We, you know, usually the narrative with neurodiverse clients that come to us, they've been constantly told what they're not good at. Your eye contact is not very good. Your communication is not very clear. You are always late. You are not good at this. You're not good at this. So as Genius Within, our main aim as a company, our main ethos is to look at strength areas. We are changing the narratives. A participant comes to us, we say, what are you good at? We then job match them with the skills that they have with jobs. That again feeds into that previous picture that Gizem just showed, where you're saying, you know, these are the processes for you to be able to climb the tree to get the apple. If you can't climb the tree, you can't get the apple. Is that necessarily true or correct for the company or for the person? The end goal is to get the apple. So with what you've got on strengths and what you've got on the developmental areas, what needs to happen for you to be able to get that apple? So this is where we speak of the spiky profile. A neurotypical person's IQ would be what we call the average, which is the dotted middle line. So a neurotypical person's cognitive skills tend to range around that 100% mark. But a neurodiverse person or a neuro minority will fluctuate with that peaks and troughs, the peaks being the strengths, the troughs being developmental areas. So what we see is their neurotypical minorities tend to have things that they're really good at and things that we call developmental areas. So really, it's just looking at this. We've got several assessments that we use at Genius Within that look at these cognitive abilities, and we work on them. We do screening calls, we do screening profiles, we do screening assessments that then give us this cognitive abilities. So if you go on to the next slide, Gizam, they tend to be very good with perceptual reasoning. They tend to be good with verbal comprehension, processing speed, working memory, and motor control. So perceptual reasoning is just defining project goals. They are usually visual and mechanical thinkers. They tend to think outside the box. They tend to notice patterns and that something is different. So this is a really good skill. And we tend to job match the skills with what the skill is really. Verbal comprehension, tends to mean that they've got the ability to ask the right questions. They're quite abstract in their thinking. They articulate to the point. They explain and describe concepts in that very abstract and straightforward manner. And they're really good at making links between ideas and advanced contracts. Processing speed, they focus on attention. Visually scanning is good as well, and they're really good with sequencing new information. They make quick decisions, usually based on text, and can code like information and in the moment as well. So something like processing speed, we'll then look at maybe coding, IT skills. That's why I think companies like Microlink ended up taking quite a few coders, because they realized actually neurodiverse participants or neurodiverse clients are actually very good with their processing speed. They understand it a little bit more than what a neuro minority would. So it's really just about companies realizing those skills. First of all, we make the participant aware what are their skills, then go to the employers and sell your skills. I'm very good at this, so that means I can do A, B, C, and D. My visual comprehension has been highlighted as a strength for myself. That means I'm able to explain concept, I'm able to describe construct. So it's really just what we're doing. We're equipping the participant to then go to the employer with these strengths and highlighting to them so that they get hired. And then once they're hired, we're also offering that in-work support, obviously depending on what employability project you're on. And really that is what we're doing at Genius Within.
Thank you. Right, okay. I love these pictures. They were all over social media on Genius Within social media. It's just to show you how common, how relevant it is, neurodiversity. So you have the same chance of being autistic as you do being able to lick your own nose. It's 1%. Tourette's is more common than having green eyes. That was shocking for me. I did not imagine that. So dyspraxia is as common as red hair. And sorry, just to review, and you have approximately the same percentage of chance being dyslexic as being left-handed. So therefore, again, I'm going to draw your attention back to people may not be, your employees or you yourselves may not be diagnosed, but you may be neurodiverse, and it's just being aware of what your strengths are and what your development areas, and just simply approaching, there are loads of free tools out there that you can assess your strengths and your development areas. Okay, legal definitions. I'm just going to read this because obviously can't memorize it. Okay, so there is no need for a diagnosis. It is the effect, not the cause or the impairment that matters. Employers are required to make reasonable adjustments to enable employees to meet their potential. Okay, so you have someone who thinks that they've got autism. So you will have to obviously make the adjustments to enable them to work at their best. They may not have the diagnosis, formal diagnosis, and we all know that diagnosis, a formal diagnosis, takes so long at the moment, obviously with NHS being overwhelmed with everything. So does that mean like I've got one participant who couldn't get a diagnosis for 2-3 years now, still waiting for it. So, but does that mean that we're not going to support this participant for 3 years? No, that's not true. We will have to. A person has a disability if she or he has a physical or mental impairment that has substantial and long-term, by saying long-term, more than 12 months, adverse effect on his or her ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. Okay, you know, if they can't like get up the bed, we will have to do something about it. So if it's more like long-term. Neurodiverse conditions, whether diagnosed or not, again, it's involved, diagnosed or not, are considered as disabilities and are protected characteristics under the Equality Act. Okay, another lovely picture. So I'm just aware of time, so I'm gonna whiz through these. So in the first image, it is assumed that everyone will benefit from the same support. They are being treated equally. Okay, so everybody gets the same support. And there's this person who is shorter than the others, is not able to watch the match. Then in the second image, individuals are given different support to make it possible for them to have equal access to the game. They are being treated equitably. And in the third one, which is the addition, like that wasn't part of the picture before, but like it's been added later. In the third image, all three can see the game without any support or accommodations because the cause of the inequity was addressed. So this systemic barrier has been removed. So obviously that's where we want to get to. We don't want to just keep going like, well, we want to support people, but we don't want them to feel like they're being treated differently, because obviously that will create some stigma, and people might want to say like, well, I don't want to disclose my condition because I don't want to be seen as I'm not able to do that job. And often those people mask themselves, and then we see a lot of burnouts later on, performance issues, etc., because obviously they get exhausted by masking their conditions. Over to you, Patience.
So I've just seen a question in the chat box. I didn't answer it because we are just coming to that part as well. Someone just said, I like the expression developmental areas. So does it suggest that someone can improve it? And the answer is yes. So if there's a certain role that is being advertised for, I've come and I've highlighted my strengths, or I've looked at the job description and I've seen that I'm very good at A, B, C, and D, which is required on the job description, but also I need A, C, D for me to be able to work that job. We talk of adjustments that come into place into work placement. So now it is by law, companies and employers do have to offer these reasonable adjustments to participants or to clients when they go into work. Nancy, our CEO, our former CEO, just did a study, and she kind of came up with these, we've got them on the slides, these reasonable adjustments is usually what participants want when they go into work or they find most beneficial. So usually things like supervisor inputs, having regular one-to-one discussions with your supervisors or with your managers, coaching and co-coaching, which is also things that we also deliver within Genius Within. You can work with the participants, but we also work with the employer delivering coaching and co-coaching on how best to support that participant so that they can work at their best. We also do formal training so that the rest of the employers can understand how other people work. So by them understanding how everyone else works, that person gets to feel integrated and be part of the team, and everyone else works at their best. We also talk about environmental flexibility. Some of our neurodiverse clients might say, I'm actually affected by light. My sensories do get prompted by noise, so I would work better if I said somewhere that's a little bit further away from the faxing machine or from the printer, or I would like to sit in a quiet room. Is it possible for me to have these things, looking at the environment? So we are making the environment fit for the employee or the participant to work. So it's really all these reasonable adjustments that are listed here. Assistive tech now, if it's someone that is not able to read, can they be something that can be provided by the company? We've got now read to text and text to read assistive technology out there. Is it a workstation adaptation that needs to happen for them? So it's really looking at all these adjustments. And we also, I noticed also in the chat, someone was talking about stereotyping. The chart that we just used with the spiky profile, that was for an individual. So these assessments that we do, the results are quite personalized and they're quite individual as well. So the assessment will give you your strengths and the peaks and the troughs, the developmental areas, according to how you would have answered. So that was just an example to say, you know, most of the time this is what is highlighted, but they're very much personalized and individualized. So just going to the next slide as well, Gizam. So how do we get this? So how do we get the reasonable adjustments matched to the strengths? We've got what we call core modules. So Genius Within is very much psychology led. We have core modules that we use when we're working with our clients and working with employees and employers to look at strategies to put into place. So they would have come from those developmental areas. You said that communication is a developmental area for yourself. How do we improve that so that, you know, your employer and your colleagues can understand you better? What would work better for you so that you're able to work at your best? So does going into a quiet place help you, or do you need to have a flow chart maybe when you're in work work better for you? Written instructions, would that work better for you instead of them being verbally said to you? We're taking regular breaks because some people can't sit still for too long. Like what Gizem was saying, you know, I find it hard to sit still. So does it mean that you taking, you know, 5-minute break every 20 minutes work better for you so that when you come down and sit down, you're able to just focus on your work and do, you know, what you're able to do? So we then look at, you know, you're looking at those developmental areas and putting strategies in place for that person. And again, very individualized and personalized. So it's not a one size fits all. It's actually looking at an individual needs through coaching, you know, using our core modules, what would work better for you, and matching them, but also bringing in the employer to say what would work better for you. This is the area that we need to work on. What would work better for you? So it's two-pronged approach, really.
I think it is just so having neurodiverse employees does not mean that like you're expecting them to do less. It's you're basically providing the support. You still have to expect them to complete the job, but once you identify what support they need, they will be able to do it. But it's just identifying what support they need. And obviously it's important for individuals to go for the jobs that suit them as well. So if you put someone who's got dyslexia and their job is to do admin, this person will struggle. So then you have to go back to strengths, and then as patients said, just match those skills with the right jobs. So that's what we do. Okay, so how can companies support individuals in the recruitment process? So application process, again, needs to be accessible for participants based on their needs. Okay, so there's not, again, one size fits all. So a lot of my participants, the participants I work with, not my participants, that they say they find the application forms too long. They see that, they get overwhelmed, and they say, well, I'll just do that later. Procrastination comes, yeah. So we then say well, can we have shorter application forms with simple and clear questions so they actually know what to say, because they might be overthinking, which can lead into low motivation, procrastination, all that. So maybe just some shorter forms with concise questions can help with that. And again, sometimes people find it difficult to fill in those forms. So can they actually do video application? Can they film themselves answering what their strengths are, why they want to work for you and for your company, and then just send that over. Would that be possible? So just kind of like trying to, I guess, like get you thinking of what can you do. And in the interviews, a lot of people freak out, including me. I just honestly like freeze sometimes, can't get the words out of my mouth, start shaking, etc. I've done loads of interviews in the past, but still. So sending questions prior to the interview so people can actually sit down and then write down their answers and feel a bit more prepared, because often you know, that like level of uncertainty will create a lot of anxiety on people, which will then end up with just basically flight, fright, freeze response. So yeah, you can send the questions before. You can divide, if it's like a long interview, maybe you can divide it into 2 parts to have a bit of a break, a breather. I'm not saying like go for half an hour, everyone's time is valuable, but just go like 5 minutes just so this person can breathe a little bit, have a sip of water or something and come back. That could help. Work trials instead of an interview. Interviews are quite overwhelming. Obviously, I'm not saying like, you know, they need to be changed, but yeah, if they can be, maybe work trials might be better, because you might have a very practical job that the person is able to do, but if it's just the interview that they're struggling, maybe work trial could work better. And allowing participants to bring in their notes to the interviews. So if they panic for a bit, they can just read their notes and then answer the questions. So that could help a lot. Because like what you'll recognize is that once they read 1 or 2 sentences, they will remember, and then they'll just pick up from where they left. And conducting virtual interviews, so that could help as well, because often like for neurodiverse participants, going somewhere is already overwhelming. So once they arrive to the interview place, they've already taken the bus or the train, had to do loads of social interactions along the way, which they're overwhelmed and their performance will drop. So if it's possible, maybe they can just do virtual in their own environment, in their safe place, and they can just actually focus on their questions and the interview rather than like dealing with all the, this is a new place, this is how do I get there, etc. And in the induction period, okay, so you hired someone, so how can you support them? You can always suggest a work buddy, because you know, they might be struggling with like the initial building relationships because they can't trust their colleagues, etc. initially. So you can just say, oh yeah, you know what, like you've got a work buddy, he or she's been in this job for a year, we'll show you, we'll ask you questions. It'll be a lot easier to build relationship with one person rather than trying to build relationship with 10 colleagues at the same time. So they'll just feel closer to that person and they feel like they can go and ask questions if they need to. Regular check-ins with the line manager is really helpful. So then as a line manager, you also understand where they're struggling, and then you can identify the support with them, rather than just saying, okay, I've shown you how to do it, I'll come and check with you next week. So a week might be too long, you know, a lot can happen in a week. So regular check-ins, maybe just like 5-10 minutes at the end of the day or every other day would be helpful. Having a step-by-step approach, just introduce one part at a time, demonstrate it, get them to do it, and then say, okay, like, how are you getting along? Yeah, can I just, you know, see what how are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And then ask them, like, so, you know, are you okay, or do you need any support? Can we provide any support? And again, checking in with them. And if you're working with a neurodiverse client and you're struggling to implement support, then obviously I would say Access to Work is an amazing place to go to get workplace needs assessment. So then you will have like a 3-hour assessment by specialists, and they will tell you like, okay, yeah, you need to do this and that. So it'll be a lot easier to implement, and you will see the performance, peak in the performance quite quickly. That's it. And these are the services we offer. We do awareness training, next level neurodiversity. We work in social justice. We do assessments and diagnosis and coaching. Okay, I'm aware of the time, so we've only got 5 minutes. So is there any questions in the chat box, Tony? I'm so sorry we've gone over.
Patience, thank you so much indeed. That was really, really interesting. Lots and lots of things going on in the chat box. Questions, to start with an easy one, we've got a few minutes. How do we keep up with the language? As I say, neurominorities was a new one on me today. So how do we keep up with the language and not be afraid of it? Because I think that can be a problem for a lot of people.
I would say, so just basically go on social media, follow pages like Genius. I'm not trying to promote this, but, you know, follow these kind of pages. There are blogs. Forbes is one of them, so you can follow, and there's a lot of information on there as well. That's just the way it is, just basically reading more and signing up to more articles and things.
And you guys will keep inventing new words as we go forward, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Love the two slides that you showed. The one of please climb that tree. That really resonated. And the other one with the barriers removed, equity, equality, and then the barriers removed. Now, are you seeing movement within the HR profession, human resources profession, to actually revamp the way they do things and the practices? You talked about recruitment. Is that happening in practice, or are we still doing the old style of?
I'm going to be honest, it is happening. It's a slow process because it's a big change that we're asking, but it's happening because we're doing a lot of more awareness sessions like these, and people are more keen now to learn more and, you know, employ more neurodiverse participants, what clients, what they got, employees. So yeah, it is happening, change is happening, but it's a slow and steady process.
So I think we're happy because people are asking the questions. People are saying, what are you talking about? They're interested to find out. And I think for us, that's a big, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I was listening to Nancy Doyle, your previous boss, and she talked about the best question you can ask as an employer, not just with somebody who's neurodiverse, but with anybody, is what can I do to help you to be the best that you can be in your job? And I thought back on my career, and, you know, I can't remember anybody ever asking me that, but hey ho. But that I thought was just a brilliant question.
It is. And the other question that we always ask at Genius Within, and I'm more than happy for you to take on that question, is what would you like to happen? So if someone comes to you complaining about something, something's not going right, etc., they're definitely stuck in a drama. Just ask them, what would you like to have happen? And then work your way backwards just to identify the support. But yeah, that's it. Those are two good questions.
And there's a couple just that are directed at you.
Okay.
You undiagnosed ADHD, if you don't mind. The slide stated that ADHD was a clinical condition that people are born with. You said you'd acquired it. Is it acquired or born?
I was born with it, I believe. It's hard to say, but I believe from the stories that I've heard from my parents that I could not sit still for hours and running around all the time. And in the school, that came up as like I was disrupting the classroom because I was trying to talk to everyone. Teachers didn't know what to do. I needed a break all the time and I wasn't given. Then again, in several jobs, I was working an open office plan, constantly getting distracted by everything, which did not work well for me. So I think I was born with it, but I always struggled with the diagnosis because I did well at school. And that's one of the things that we see. If people are doing well at school, they tend to slip through the cracks, if that makes sense. Yeah. That was my story. It's very open and honest.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing that. And patience, it's Liz Bell's made a comment here and also sort of question. It's great that Genius Within is helping neurominorities to identify their strengths, but it can be hard to advocate for yourself when there's little or no understanding about how neurodivergence, particularly things like ADHD, affects functioning. How can we as neurominorities and allies educate and inform employers and other service providers about neurodiversity?
I think it's been taking an active approach as a neurominority, working with Genius Within. If there's anything that I see, I can educate myself first of all. If it's something that I cannot find information with, then bring other people or other companies on board like ourselves to come in, do the awareness trainings, or is it working with the supervisors, the managers, And then it's going back to the coaching and the co-coaching, where we're working with a neurodiverse person, getting the manager on board as well, so that we're working with both and getting, you know, everyone to work at their best. So it is a process, but I think it's all about educating and reaching out.
Brilliant. And working together on that whole process. And there's no doubt diversity, equity, inclusion are getting the profile now that perhaps they weren't 10 years ago. There's a massive shift, and I'm seeing more and more HR directors changing the way we do things, and not just having board directives that we want to be more diverse and inclusive, but actually understanding that and building that into their culture. And there's a lovely thing about inclusivity, and it might well be a statistic from you guys, is that inclusive employers tend to have happier employees. Happy employees, believe it or not, are more productive, and more productive employees are more profitable. So it's a win-win-win. It's a win for the individual, the business, the community, and everybody. And I'm just going to close now because I'm conscious we're coming up to time. There's just a comment here from Josh, which says, "I'm so pleased that GEM have collaborated," and that's a lovely word, with Genius Within. "I have received great coaching and support from Genius Within." Well done. As well as training, all funded through something called Access to Work. Now, some of you on the call will know about Access to Work, but it's money available from the government to provide support so that people can make the adjustments required to enable that person to shine in their new role. It's easily sought, but it's a bit of a government secret in some respects, but we've got people who are going to work in taxis because they can't use public transport, all sorts of things. So if there's anything you want to know more there, we can help you, or Genius Within can help you. So I'm going to bring us to a close now, and to thank you. There will be more questions, but please, your details, our details are there, so please do write to us. But you've joined us today for the second session. You signed up. And you're therefore automatically signed up for the next two sessions, next 2 Tuesdays at 12 o'clock. And we'll be looking next week at recruiting foreign workers and refugees. And in a post-Brexit environment, I think that's going to be very topical. And then we'll round off with a bigger session on in the broadest sense, on diversity. So please share this with your colleagues or anybody else that you think may be interested. You can find out more about Inclusivity Works and the great work that's going on here with employers in Gloucestershire, and how your organisation can potentially be recognised as a Gloucestershire inclusive employer by visiting our website, which is www.inclusivityworks.org, and our LinkedIn page, Inclusivity Works LinkedIn, or by contacting me, Tony Solomon, or my colleague, Sue Gilding, and we'll be more than happy to have the conversation and meet with you. Ultimately, together, through all of this, we want to help make Gloucestershire a beacon for inclusivity, so that when people are talking about it, and we've already had employers going up to Parliament to talk about how they are embracing diversity and inclusion in the workplace, sharing their best practice, and that's what we want to build here in Gloucestershire. Now, in a moment, we're going to close the session, and thank you again so much for joining us today. There will pop up a short, and I mean really short, survey. It will take no more than 45 seconds, even for somebody who's a bit of a Luddite like me, to complete. But if you would just take that 45 seconds, we'd be extremely grateful, because it does help us to continue to improve what we are doing. So thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Gazan. Thank you, Patience. Thank you all for joining us, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care.